The Krystal bugger is a pretty standard steelhead fly. It's not really tied any differently than a standard woolly bugger. All that stuff's pretty much the same. It's just a little bit flashier, a little bit more shine to it, a little bit of a different body material. But for the most part, you know, the technique and everything is basically the same. So pretty straightforward tie. In the vise, I have a size 6 curved nymph hook. And the bead on there is one size bigger than what I would normally put on that hook. I'm trying to weasel out the package here. This is a 732, which is, again, about one size larger than what I would normally put on here. But the reason why I'm using a little bit of a bigger bead is because the body material is going to fill that space in nicely. It's going to give a much better finished look to the fly. If I use a little bit of a smaller bead, the body and all the kind of stuff that's going to go on this is going to overpower it a little bit. So I like to up it by one size, and the added weight is a good bonus too. What I'm going to throw onto the shank here is some .020 lead-free wire. And obviously this is for a little bit of weight, but I don't know. I got to be honest, I kind of stopped using this weighted underbody stuff. I feel like the actual weight that it adds to the fly is pretty negligible, so I don't really use it much anymore. The reason why I'm using it on this fly is I just want to kind of just fill in the space there. Yeah, that was a smaller piece than I thought, but that's really not a big deal. You know, you got a small little shank here with a larger bead. I just wanted to fill that space in a little bit, so it's really less about the weight and more about that. Thread-wise, I'm going to use a 3/0 Euro thread here. It's more of kind of like a streamer strength, but I really want to be able to bite down on some materials here, so 3/0 is going to get the job done. So I'm just going to put a little bit of a base there. For the tail, I have a piece of woolly bugger marabou in white. And I'm just going to get all of my fibers going in one direction. Gather them all up, kind of measure that out. You want a length about the length of the hook. And I'm just going to lay that right on there, get a real good strong wrap, and then tight touching wraps to secure that down. So the marabou can kind of roll around on you a little bit, so make sure that when you are taking your first set of wraps down that you're really biting down and securing that in there. I was talking before about how I wanted to fill this space in, and I do that with wire. Normally I run the wire down to about where this marabou is, but I told you that piece was a little bit shorter than I thought it was, but that's fine. I'm just going to snip the marabou off here to fill that space in with material instead. Now, before I move my thread back up, I want to do a couple of things here down in the back. The first thing I want is I want a little bit of flash on this fly. And you can use anything you want for this. Where I fish for steelhead, blue is a great color. I can't explain it. I can't, there's nothing I can say as to why. I just feel like whenever I use blue, I do a lot better. So, got a little bit of blue Krystal flash. I'm just going to kind of put that in place. Get a couple of loose wraps to kind of keep that where I want it. Then I'm going to fold it over and advance it on the back side to get that all tied in. And we'll just clean up these edges here, get the length that we want by snipping that. And we're all good. So for the body, what I'm going to use is I'm going to use some of this cactus chenille. This is pearl, size medium. And I want to get all of that stuff tied in before I bring my thread back to the front. So I'm just going to take my scissors, and I'm not going to snip it. I'm just going to drag it across and expose the string that makes up the core of this stuff. And that's going to give me a really nice tie-in point. Just going to slip that right in there. Secure that down with a couple wraps. I'm still not going to advance my thread because I have one more thing to tie in. So this is a little piece of silver wire, size small. So I'm just going to kind of slip that up under there. And now I'm going to make tight, firm touching wraps towards the front of the fly. Just get all that secured down. You don't need a completely uniform body, but I don't know. It's just the OCD in me. I like to have it somewhat, somewhat uniform. All right. So the next order of business is our hackle. And I like to tie this in at this point. There's a couple ways you can do this. You can either wrap the body, tie the body off, and then tie your hackle in, or you can tie your hackle in now. What I like to do is I like to tie the hackle in now, even though that does present one challenge that's a little bit of a pain. But the reason why I don't like to tie the hackle in last is because when my body runs all the way up to the bead, if I'm starting to wrap, I'm going to build up some thread there, and you're not going to see the body go all the way up to the bead. And I don't really like that look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie the hackle in now. Then when I start spinning my body, I'll show you the problem that presents. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's a little bit of a pain, but it's workable. So I've got a piece of grizzly hackle here. And where I get the feathers for almost all of my woolly buggers, now I do like the whiting bugger packs. But what I do is, this is going to be kind of hard to show on the camera because this is huge, but I'm just grabbing the top part of this. This is a Duncree saddle, and I'm going to pull through. You can see how massive this thing is. But if you have a saddle at home, any kind of saddle, flip the saddle around and look at the back side where you have the skin, and all of these feathers in here are fantastic woolly bugger feathers. There are all kinds of different colors, different patterns. You're never really going to know what you're going to have on the back side of a saddle until you flip it over. You might have, this is a Duncree cape. Did I say grizzly? I meant Duncree. This is a Duncree cape, Duncree saddle. I'm a mess today. A Duncree saddle, and on the back it has grizzly woolly bugger feathers. So, I have another brown saddle that on the back has all kinds of, different colored feathers. So if you have a saddle, flip it around, take a look at the back. There's some really interesting feathers there on the back, and that's almost exclusively what I use for all of my woolly buggers. These feathers on the back have a nice balance of some stiffness, but also some ability to absorb water. They're kind of like a really nice middle ground. They're a really cool feather. You don't have to use that. Again, whiting bugger packs are good. There's all kinds of different feathers you can use for woolly buggers, but I really like the feathers that are found on the back of a dry fly saddle. So I'm going to cut some of this off. And you can also see these feathers have a nice taper to them as well. So to figure out where I want to tie this in, I'm just going to size it. I'm going to put it right up to the hook. That's a little big, right about there is where I want to tie this in. So that's where I'm going to start stripping some of the feathers off. And because I'm going to wrap it that way, you can see how I stripped a little bit more off on this side because my first wrap is going to go that way. So now that I have this all prepped, I'm just going to slide that up right to where I want it, orient it the way that I want it. Get a loose wrap or two just to kind of hold it in place. And then we're really going to bite down and tie that in as we move our way towards the back. And woolly buggers have been tied for, who knows how long, forever. One of the staple flies. So there's a million different ways to tie them. This is just the way that I do it. So now that I have everything that I need tied in, it is kind of funny, like everything that we need tied in is tied in. We just have to kind of form the fly. It's kind of strange how that works. Most flies, you're continuously tying in materials. This fly, you tie in everything, and you do also a bunch of other stuff at the end. I gotta swing my thread holder around. There we go. Okay, so now we're obviously going to wrap the body. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the rotary feature for that. And I want to point out again, I mentioned in the beginning that tying the hackle in right away does lead to a little bit of a problem. So once I start turning this body, you'll probably see what I mean there. That feather, whoops, there we go. That feather, when you start spinning your body, of course I'm making a video and it's not doing it now. But when you do this, that feather has a tendency to get caught up and tangled in your thread. I kind of nailed that and it didn't happen at all. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm happy that it didn't happen, but that is something that can happen. But if you get it stood up nice and straight, you can avoid it, which we were able to avoid it in this case. But sometimes that feather can get tangled up in your thread. Not the worst thing in the world. It's just a little annoying to have to stop spinning your body and untangle it. But I think that that is a small price to pay to get your body material to run all the way up to the eye without building up a bunch of thread bulk to get your hackle tied in. So I would definitely recommend tying the hackle in right away and just dealing with a little bit of a tangle as we go. And then what we'll do is we'll just come in here and secure that body. I should have locked my vise. Let me get a wrap in. Get that vise locked because that's annoying me. Get a couple of nice firm wraps. Get that locked right in there. I'm going to take one little half hitch knot in front of my hackle just to, again, lock my thread, secure my work. Come in here, we'll snip that off. And we'll go back to holding our thread. I'm going to adjust this a little bit. Get down there. That's good. You even zoom out a little bit. All right, that'll work. All right, so I'm going to take the first wrap by hand just to kind of get that where I want it, get the fibers to kind of start coming off that feather. And this feather's a little on the shorter side, so I'm going to lock this up in some hackle pliers. So I'm just going to take a wrap. I'm going to angle my feather. Bring that all the way towards the back. Then I'm going to counter wrap my wire. Bring that towards the front. That'll lock everything in. Get all that stroked back. And then from here on out, you want some firm wraps because these are kind of the finishing wraps that are going to get everything locked in. Get a, whoops, caught that wire with my finger and pulled it back. Little 3-turn whip finish. Get the thread out of there. I wanted to make sure that that whip finish kind of helped to lock down the wire, so we'll come in here, we'll helicopter that off. That'll snap off nice and clean. I got one little bit of feather here we want to snip off. And that'll pretty much do it. Like I said, we don't really do much different with a crystal bugger than a regular woolly bugger. A lot of different color combinations for this, but this is a classic steelhead fly. Fantastic fly. It's really good too when you get some sunlight out there where you get the sunlight kind of hits that chenille a little bit and you get that nice subtle flash. It really gets the fish's attention. So tied basically the same way as a woolly bugger. Get that out of the way. A little bit of a different body material. I like just the pearl color. A little bit of blue for flash. So one of my favorite flies, heavily weighted, little bit of an oversized bead. Great for steelhead, great for anything really. I mean, you can fish these for trout too, obviously, but I use them mostly for steelhead. I've been tying up a bunch of these, so pretty straightforward. Any questions, comments, anything, just throw them right in the comments and I'll respond as soon as I can.